Oh, nice. They didn't put our vignette. So give me 1 second here. And we're live. Welcome, everyone. Fernando, you okay as well?
Yes, I'm okay. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, my machine is super slow today, man. So it's going to be fun to see how that goes. Well, but welcome everyone for the Logic Apps Live in April 2025. I can't believe that we already like almost half a year into 2025. But let's go and see what we have in store for today. So if you guys joined last month, you remember that we did like a special agenda just with some MVPs because you were on the MVP summit. That means that we actually didn't talk about the Ace Aviator for March. So today we're going to have not one but two Ace Aviators to highlight. We have lots of community updates of things that are happening like as soon as next week, but also getting ready for June. June is going to be packed with updates. Fernando is going to have showing something really cool about a new initiative called Logic Apps Labs. And I'm going to be showing the Logic Apps automated test framework that is out for people to start using. So without more delays, let's talk about our ACE Aviators. So now we have not one but two ACE Aviators to highlight, right? The first one is Dieter. That is an enterprise integration architect in Europe. If I'm not wrong, he's based in London. And Dieter has been doing a lot of good work, starting to put some really in-depth articles around integration. And one of the things that when we asked him why he's interested in doing that, he was talking about like really value the sense of integration or the sense of community on that integration community, being able to connect and with eventers and people early in the career, help him to bridge the gap on knowledge that he needed. And today, because he's now in a more senior role, he wants us to give back, but it doesn't that just as his responsibility, but also his pleasure to do so. When we ask him about what would be an advice for people, right, that is starting a career, he thought about like master the fundamentals, not just the tools. Like tools are easy to get to, right? And getting caught up in the latest frameworks and stuff is cool, but understand the concepts and understand the things like networking, security, how to create systems that work well is what actually makes you to advance in your career relatively fast. And the third question about if I had a magic wand, what I would be changing, especially in logic apps, he really talked about like having more predictability and uniformity around the adapters, like making sure that adapters works doesn't matter what type of workflows working, and that's actually something that we really interested and cognizant on. So we're trying to do that as much as possible. In some cases, we know that is impossible because of the structure of what some of those workflow types means, but we're trying to as much as possible to abide by that magic wand. Thanks, Dieter, for being such really good community leader. And if you wanted to read everything that he talked, you go back in time to March 24 on Logic Apps Aviators /March 24, and you can see the full interview plus what we highlighted that month.
Yeah. Thank you, Dieter.
Let's go to the next one. So in April, we highlighted Massimo Crippa, which is a lead architect at Codit, right? So that again on the first question about why community, right? He says that he loves the technology, but the people at heart that is what really makes him inspired by that. He met like a lot of incredible individuals and being able to contribute back and to learn and collaborate with those industry experts is what keeps him motivated. And that reminds, brings me back when I was starting on that and reading like blog posts and things about from Kent, from Sandro Pereira, right? And now being able to be here and be working with them is I totally relate to this thing about the people at the center of that integration community. It's what really makes it special. From his advice, he talked about like develop a really strong reading habit. Although we have a lot of things online, we have a lot of things that are available with courses, with the test podcasts. Sometimes nothing beats a really good technical book to go back to get into the details. I don't know how many of us has that the enterprise integration book still stored somewhere, and doesn't matter what technology has changed throughout the years, that those concepts there are still quite valid. So totally agree with Maximo on that. Finally, on the magic wand, it's not it wouldn't be a surprise if you follow Massimo's blog posts and stuff, that what we would love to have is a fully containerized Logic Apps experience, right? Like the workflow, the connectors, and monitorings, like everything in a box. He really thinks about a Lego-like module approach where you can get a Logic Apps container, maybe a Logic Apps APIM, and starting to get those things, but run everywhere in the edge. Cool thing about that is like we're getting kind of getting
Yeah,
close with that,
with
with
hybrid.
hybrid, with the
Hmm.
on-premise gateways for APIM, right? So we're getting that Lego set there. So maybe that is not so much a distant future, the Magic Wand. If you wanted to know more about what Massimo thinks and also see the updates that we had in April, go to Logic Apps Aviator / April 25. And now to you, Fernando, to talk about some of the things that are happening in the community, including some of our own events.
Yep. Thank you, Wagner. I also saw some very interesting posts from Massimo regarding MCP servers, so definitely take a look at his content. It's very, very good. So now let's get to community updates. We have a lot of events coming up. Of course, Microsoft Build, one of the biggest ones. But before getting into Build and getting into May, by the end of April, we will be hosting a Microsoft organized event that is called Unleash AI Innovation with a Modern Integration Platform and an API First Strategy. This is going to be a 2-day virtual event that brings together people from Microsoft, analysts, and also 9 enterprise customers from around the world. This is going to be in multiple time zones and it's going to be across 2 days. And we will have the PMs and the product group from API management, of course, our PMs from our product group from Azure Logic Apps, and more content from our peers, from partners, and from customers. So don't miss this opportunity to see what your peers, what your other industry leaders are doing regarding integration and also API first. And this is going to be Tuesday, 29th of April and Wednesday, April 30th, 9 a.m. PST each day. So it's going to be half day. And there's also another one for Australia. And there's also another one for Europe. So basically, take a look at these links, take a look at this calendar, and feel free to join this event.
Yeah, that's been kind of multicasted in 3 time zones is going to be really cool, right? At the right time, so you don't have to wake up like super early to do that, to watch those.
Definitely. And of course, we're going, before getting into Integrate, we will also have Microsoft Build the week of May 20th. If you're coming to Redmond, our team is going to be there. Feel free to see our sessions regarding Logic Apps, and also we'll have a booth. And after we have Microsoft Build in May 20th, our biggest event regarding integration, largest Microsoft Integration Tech Conference, which is going to take place in London in June 9th and June 10th. So if you're close to London, if you can take a train and go there to this conference, this is a very exciting conference. There's a lot of energy, a lot of smart people doing integration, MVPs, Microsoft product groups, given sessions. Wagner and Kent are going to be there, so please also, I think there's still a discount, if I'm correct. Please
Mm-hmm.
go to the website, and I believe, yeah, there's still a discount, and we also have this code that you can use to get 50% off. And yeah, please book your tickets for Integrate. We're getting really, really close.
And I can tell from experience, even if you have to travel 23 hours to get there, it's still super worth.
Yeah, definitely. It's a long travel for you, Wagner. So yeah. And of course, near the time of Integrate, in this case, a couple of days previous to Integrate, we will also have another big event in Europe. In this case, in Netherlands, is the Azure Integration Congress 2025. So this is hosted by HSO, and in this case, Ken Ware will be there for this Integration Congress. So also feel free to jump into this website if you want to scan the QR code or copy the link. And again, this is also will be in the Europe time zone. And we also have more events for Europe. In this case, this is the Microsoft Integration User Group. I believe this is also, yeah, this is also in Netherlands. So Ken Ware will come and also share all the updates of what we have been working in Azure Integration Services, what's coming up with Logic Apps and AI. So a lot of good news, roadmaps, updates for June. Also, feel free to scan the QR code or join the link. And last one but not least, it's our Azure Aviators in Germany. And for this, I believe Ken will also be traveling to Germany for this, Hamburg, in June 12th. So again, a great opportunity to meet a lot of smart people doing a lot of cool work in integration. Sebastian, one of our MVPs, is there. So please join if you're in Germany, close to Hamburg. This will be a great opportunity to meet Kent and meet the team.
Yeah, and that one I think is going to be the bigger than last year, because last year I think they had Sandro and the Kent and make like a night of integration. On that one, I know there is if you go to the registration, you're going to find out there is more MVPs going as well, and some of the community leaders from around Europe.
Definitely. So a great opportunity to do some networking and meet a lot of very, very cool people and MVPs there. So those are the events that we have for you. Some updates regarding our community playbook. Remember, our community playbook it's an opportunity for you to highlight any good work that you're doing. If you have a blog post or any content that you created, you can submit this content to us, and we can work a little bit on it and publish it also in our documentation. Our official Logic Apps or AIS Microsoft documentation. And that way we can highlight your work. You can also highlight your work to others, any learnings. Today we have new articles that have been created through this community playbook. The first one, Deploy Azure Integration Services with Azure Verified Models by Victor Hogberg. And the second one, Secure Workflows in Azure Logic Apps with Azure API Management. Very popular topic. How can you protect your HTTP endpoints with Logic Apps using OAuth, using certificates, using secrets? So this was created by Andrew Wilson. So take a look at that content also. And feel free to participate. If you want to send us your content, feel free to send it through this form, I believe. And we can review it and we can work it together to publish it in our documentation.
Yeah, and I'm busy with I think I have 4 new articles that
In the
I'm
pipeline.
editing and reviewing with the authors for publication. So right now, I'm actually the bottleneck on that one. So
Nice.
and yeah, we're really looking for the more articles. If you have patterns and practices, if you have like a real life samples, and you have conceptual articles, send it through. We wanted to make sure that like we close the gap between very conceptual and how tools that we have on our documentation and the real life examples, the patterns that are industry specific and things like that to be added by you all from the community.
Yep. And talking about how-tos, this brings us to our next update. This is also in line with the community playbook. In the community playbook, we aim to have all type of content, right? Either conceptual or how-to, and we want to integrate into our documentation. This is a new initiative that we are creating, and this is basically what we call the Logic Apps Labs website. This is basically a place where you can get a repository of grab and go resources designed to help you learn and teach others about Azure Logic Apps. This is very important. Also Wagner and myself, we were Azure MVPs. And one of the best ways of learning how to do something, in my case, for example, is teaching others how to do it, right? So if you learn how to do something with Azure Logic Apps and you want to teach others, want to create a hands-on lab, a workshop experience, this is the place where you can go, right? We aim to make this effort completely community driven anyone who wants to contribute a new lab or a new workshop just has to fork the repo, send us a pull request, and I'll be glad to approve it. Probably just do some fine tuning, adding some architecture diagrams, and some fun stuff that we're going to show. So basically, and all of these labs, we will give you credit for your work. So if you want to put your company, yourself, or your colleagues as part of this lab, and you want to, if you are applying for the MVP award, you can also, this will be a contribution, or if you want to highlight that you're part of this effort also, we're looking for that. And it's very simple to contribute. It's just basic markdown, nothing more than that. And we use this framework that we call Docusaurus. And I'm going to show it. And it's very simple to contribute. It's based on GitHub pages. And this is one of the efforts that we're driving right now. Of course, we're talking of technology. So one of the easiest way to learn technology is basically with hands-on lab. So let's take a look. How does this look in real life? Okay. So this is the Logic Apps Labs workshop. We have the link in the QR code that we're going to share later. Basically, this is a place where you can find grab and go simple workshops of very specific scenarios where you can use them to teach others about Logic Apps or to teach yourself about Logic Apps, right? So here you will find multiple workshops. Right now, we're just starting this effort. So for example, we have 3 workshops around AI. Let me refresh here. We should see another one. Yeah. So for example, we have one workshop here, how to do RAG indexing using Azure Search and also Azure OpenAI together with parsing documents, indexing those for vector search and using in LLMs. So the structure of these workshops is very straightforward. We have the architecture, we have the introduction of the workshop. We also, as we know, everyone's using an AI companion, either GitHub Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, Azure Copilot. We bring that as part of the experience. So for example, we're putting here some interesting questions that you can ask your Copilot to enhance your learning experience. What is RAG in AI? What is Azure AI Search? What is vectorization in the context of search? So you can enrich your learning. Simpler prerequisites, what do you need to do this workshop? And then basically the step-by-step process to do this in Azure and get the learning experience, right? This framework is really simple. Docusaurus, has very cool quality of life features. For example, you can zoom in the image. You can have multiple light or night appearances if you would like. So this is very straightforward. And then you get the experience and you learn something. Then basically you just get a conclusion of what did we learn in this lab, right? So just like that, we are adding more workshops here. This is one created by Parth, a member of our team. You know how to start doing AI agents. In this case, this is a procurement assistant. You know how to do this step by step in Azure Logic Apps. The schemas, everything is there. Another one interesting here, how to do RAG, in this case with external data sources. This was created by Mahesh inside Microsoft. In this case with a very popular intranet software, which is SharePoint. So again, if you want to contribute, it's very simple. We just have a contribution guide. Basically, you just fork this lab, create a new lab. We have a template that you can use here with this structure. And if you go to our GitHub repo, this is going to be very straightforward. For example, here in the website, you can go directly to the GitHub repo. And also, as part of making things easier, you just, need to fork this repo. You can open it in your GitHub code space. We have configured a GitHub code space with all the dependencies, Node, NPM, NVM, and that's basically it. And through GitHub code space, basically, if you want to add a new lab or if you want to do some modifications to a lab, you just have to run an npm run start. So for example, I could do a change here. For example, let's put here introduction change. And through GitHub code spaces, I just do npm run start. And this is basically my local environment. It has all the Docusaurus code and dependencies and libraries. So this is going to start my local environment. It's going to start also in HTTP server, and it's going to open a new link for me. So let's wait a minute here. Let me open it just in the meantime. And let's go back. Okay. So here you can see this is my local environment, and I just modified the procurement, added a change here. So basically, it's very simple markdown. Once you have tried and checked that your lab is the way that you want it in your local, in your GitHub code space, or either in your local development machine, basically you just create a pull request to us, and I will review it, and we'll be happy to publish that. So again, this is our Logic Apps Labs effort, hands-on lab workshop. If you want to learn yourself or contribute, this is another way besides the community playbook. So yeah, please take a look at that. I'm going to share the link here in the QR code. And yeah, we're looking for any content that you have regarding workshops, hands-on lab, and hopefully we can have a great repo of material here going forward.
Fernando, and that's me as an speaker, not as a viewer looking into that. Does it support the videos as well?
Yes. This is also, interesting because Docusaurus supports also React components and also supports full HTML. So it's more than just Markdown. You can start with Markdown to get started, but also you can add your own plugins. And there's also this other language called MDX, which is very powerful. So yeah, we went with this Docusaurus framework. It's really simple, and you can extend it and add more things. So yeah, videos, it's possible also to add.
Crazy powerful then. Looks cool.
Yeah, so take a look, guys, and we're going to add more content as we go along the way. And yeah, back to you, Wagner.
Awesome. So let me share my screen. Just let me see where I'm here. I needed to come to this and share my screen. Okay. Perfect. So as I said, my computer is slow today.
Yeah.
I'll remove your content.
Okay.
And I'll add my content.
There you go.
Yes. And inception mode on. Not anymore. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Logic Apps standard automated testing. Right. This is something that we showed a little bit before on some things that were coming. We were on private preview until now, and we have some updates on that showing some of the new stuff. But before we go down that road, let's just recap what is Logic Apps for us and what we're trying to do here, right? So what you call in Logic Apps unit tests is a way for you to represent workflow scenarios or to test workflow scenarios based on controlled inputs and outputs, right? So this is a way to disconnect you from external dependencies and focus on testing your logic. So as goals, we wanted to decouple the workflow from external connectivity, right? I don't know how many people, but I have like a really good example here where I have access to a Dataverse to connect, but I don't actually have access to the Dataverse to create specific items there for me to be able to use it, right? What we wanted to do with that is for you to be able to improve your productivity by using the tooling to test your logic without having to connect to other things, and then with that, be able to repeat those tests every time that you make changes on your workflow to guarantee that your workflow logic is still valid even if you make some changes. And as part of that process, we wanted to create something that could be used both locally, but also during your build processes. The way that is going to work is give you like a way to alter automated testing, scaffolding those tests for you. And in cases where you already have some runs that use for debugging, accelerate that unit test creation using those existing runs as the scenario that you want to test, but I'll also allow you to create tests fully from scratch if you wanted to. So let's take a quick look at how that works. We have some components that we're creating on Logic Apps, and that is some updates on the VS Code extension with what we call in a unit test generation wizard, but also the creation of a new unit test SDK that is all based on MS Test as a .NET unit framework, right? So we'll be able to actually write your unit test code on a new C# project using not just the unit test framework for sessions and things like that, but also the new components that you provided that allow you to create mocks and also to assert on the test execution results. When you're creating a new unit test, depending on the model that you use, right, it's going to be creating either one or two artifacts. The main artifact is going to be a test class, right? A C# file with test class methods and some helper methods like dynamic callbacks that allow you to actually inject mocks during the execution, not just as a static content before. And in cases where you wanted to take advantage of your run history, a mock JSON file with the mock definition for triggers and what we call in mockable actions. So mockable actions are going to be those actions that has an external connectivity that you wouldn't be able to control by yourself during runtime, right? So we allow you to control that creating mocks, but will not be creating mocks for things that executes inside the logic apps as composes of variable generation, ifs, and things like that, right? This is actually the logic that you wanted to test. When it comes to execution, you're going to have a logic apps test execution engine that is running on top of the logic apps runtime core components. And that means that actually you're going to be testing that really close to the actual runtime engine. But we're going to introduce in a couple of things. With that execution engine, we're going to allow you to programmatically call the execution of your workflow from code, right? And you don't have to be like knowing where your runtime is running, because all of that is going to be part of that execution engine. And we also be able to connect that with the VS Code test API to allow you to test individual tests or whole test suite using the test explorer, which is the components that are available inside VS Code. But nothing beats seeing that live. So let's take a look at the demo with that running. Before that, let's do Inception one more time. I'll just move this to the side and I'll go full screen on this. I think we're already full screen. Yeah, we're already full screen, so it's good. Let me add here my dev box. Okay. So we have, what I have here is like a logic apps that has 3 workflows, right? It has just give me 1 second. So I have, the first one is this workflow where I have it started with starting with a service bus pick lock, right? I go initialize some variables, I do some conditions, I call an external API, and depending on the result of that, if it works or not, I call the complete or I call the abandon message, right? Then I have another simple workflow where I have a logic app that do a list of rows, and then for each one of those, I compose some message and send the messages after a HTTP request. So let's see how those workflows can be represented when we're creating unit tests. So the first example that I'm going to do here is create a unit test from a workflow definition. So I can create that unit test from scratch and then just started writing the code for that. So I go to call this create from definition, and it's going to add a new logic app, a new tests folder on my logic apps workspace, right? And the structure that I have here is logic apps, which is the name of my logic apps project. Then the workflow, and inside the workflow, I have two more folders. I have a folder where I actually have the logic apps definition, right? And with some examples. So this is like I have a sample, a successful sample where I adding some showing how we can write mocks, and then how you can create your test mock package, like for both the trigger and some of the actions, how we can run that workflow, getting the result, and how to assert against that result. And we also have some samples showing how we can call an external or what we call in the dynamic execution of those mocks, right? Then after that, all the results. And here it shows like an example of how to write this. So this allow you to go and start running this or starting to create those mocks, but you're going to be asking, okay, how do I understand, for example, how a list workflow or a list rows connector works, or how a service bus connector works? That's where this mocks output project comes in place, right? In here, you have a set of objects or the set of classes that shows, for example, how my service bus trigger would look like, which means that I can go and create that from for the trigger. I can regenerate that and create it manually, but also how my abandon or how my complete message looks like. Okay, that can become even more interesting. Just let me open the solution here. That can become even more interesting if instead of doing this from a workflow run like that, I can actually go and do this. Can go and run a workflow. Sorry. So let it start. All right. And I'll go to my workflow tree and go to the overview. On the overview, I like did a whole lot of debugging, And then I finally get to a place where I had a logic apps that succeeded. And on that one, I have my process starting from when a message was available, right? Go through the true path of that and all the way down to the complete message. So I can also create a unit test from here. So if you go back to our Logic Apps project, inside workflow 3, now I have a create from definition and I create from run. And the difference between that create from definition and run is that one introduced a new object that is that mock, right? And this mock file actually represents in JSON format exactly that execution. So I have the execution for my trigger and show how the data looks like. I have the execution for my call external API and for my complete, because those three, if you're looking at this example, right, this was an action that goes to an external call. This is a workflow that goes to an external call, and this is another one that goes to the external call. All the other ones is actually logic that I wanted to evaluate. So from here, I can go and actually write code to do that evaluation. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of like trying to create all of that manually, I'm going to show you some examples of how that actually was working. So let's start with the most simple, that is the create from run, right? So let me get this create from run project here. Let me go to my create from run message. And what I did it here on this one is I have two methods. The first one is create from run insert message. That was exactly the one that we created. So I get the test mock definition that is basically loading my my JSON. I run, and then I start to evaluate if the test run worked fine, if the workflow status was succeeded, and if my variable target URL was set for the same value of the insert target parameters, right? And I can simply go here and run that workflow or that test, either from here or from the Explorer. So let me double check if it's finished running. Oh, there we go. So create from run insert message. So let me run it again. Okay, so it go and passed, right? Which means, like, but let's double check if all of that worked correctly. I'm actually going to be putting some breakpoints here. And actually debug this test, because I wanted to double check that everything is actually working as expected. Don't need this one. There we go. So after executed, my test run has like a list of all the actions that it run, all the variables, right? And my executor also has the list of app settings and parameters, for example, that I have available. With that, I can do like really complex assertions. So, but let's just double check. Is test run now? We can see that it's not. So fine. Is the test run status is succeeded? Yes. Is the value of parameter? So let's get this here in a watch. What is the value of that? Unit test demo insert. And what is the value of test run variables target URL? Also insert. So with that, yes, that passed, right? So you can see that you can actually debug, and especially when it not passed, like how many things you can do here. The second thing that I wanted to show that is super interesting is now that I have this mock JSON available, right? So I have that already available. How do I create another unit test? But for my update scenario, I don't need to go and run all of that again, right? So what I did here is after I loaded the mock, I just wanted to the trigger mock, my outputs body, my content data, and my status, and set it to update. Then after that, let's see if any of those values change, right? So let's add another breakpoint here and run this unit test. Okay. So now I wanted to look if I don't want it to look at that one, right? But I can edit that expression. I wanted to look at my update target URL because this is the parameter where I have the other scenario. And my update target URL should be update. But my variable, don't need to change the value of the variable. It should also be updated because this is the logic that I have inside of the workflow, right? If you go back to that workflow and look at what it was trying to do, was if my message is equals to new, come back and set my variable to the insert target. Otherwise, set my target to the update target, right? Then call that API using target URL. That's why I wanted to make sure that that is correct. And complete the message. If anything fails, abandon the message. And that's what was represented here. Well, and what happens if my API fail, my API call fail, right? How can I represent that? So now with the same mock definition, I go and mock the external API to say, hey, actually, instead of getting the value that you have on the JSON callback, make it dynamic, and because I know that I'm going to abandon now needs to be executed, make that the abandon was succeeded. Let's take a look at how this method here would work. The generated Mac. So I created an API call that is now only created on the context of the execution, but say that API actually have a status of error, of failed, with a bad request, for example, right? So let's go and run this fail HTTP action. Let me stop this. Run this test and see if it's if everything worked. There we go. And if you look at if you debug that one, what we want to show here is that this external API is called, in this case, only when the test is when we starting running the test. So let's do an F5 here. And there we go. I actually enter on that during the execution of the logic app, right? And just complete the execution with that one passing. Does any questions on the?
Yes, there are multiple questions in the chat, Wagner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to start with some questions and then I can show a couple of other processes?
Yeah, sure. The first one is this new test framework only available from the VS Code extension?
Yes, so all of that is going to be available on VS Code extension, but the test SDK is actually a new Get package that you'll be able to use it, right? The best way to use it is going to be as part of the VS Code process for locally, but because it's an SDK, what you can do is actually do something really similar to this. Let me come here, go back to this project. Actually, go to this solution. What is my Open Integrated there now? Is .NET test. I think that's the let me do. Manus H. Yeah. So let's try the .NET test here. So it's restoring the project.
I think, well, it restores. This is related to the other question, and probably this is the answer where it says, William Shield asks, can you be able to trigger this test from a pipeline after a deployment?
Exactly. So that's the idea.
This is the way, right?
You'll be able to run this, and there we go. 5 test pass, or 5 test pass, 0 skipped, 0 failed, right? So you'll be able to include that as part of your pipeline and run in the pipeline as well. We are working on guidance for that. right? If you just use .NET Test, you'll be able to run that on any virtual machine. There is also a VS Test component, and that would require you to run this on a Windows machine, right? So we're going to provide a couple of examples. One where you can simply include that as part of the test SDK, sorry, the pipelines that you already run using the just this command, and then you know if pass or fail. And the other one is like creating a new pipeline just for testing that you can inject after build using the VS Test component, because that one is actually going to give you a rich report out of this.
Yeah, and William also asked, so effectively you will need to have a Windows machine, right? And a Windows agent where you will need to run this VS test or
So
.NET
VS
test.
Test would require a Windows agent. So that's why we're planning to create a new
Uh-huh.
pipeline for that you can inject. But the .NET Test can be run from anywhere, because this is based right now on .NET 6 until the Logic Apps the Logic Apps bundle is supported on .NET 8, which we just closing on that. So when you go to GA with that, that's already going to be .NET 8.
Okay. So just to summarize, VS test, you will require a Windows machine.
Mhm.
.NET test, eventually you could do it anywhere, right?
Anywhere. And remember that we're not deploying any of that to Azure. We're just using your code to do test, just like I'm doing here inside the pipeline. That would be usually I would see that as like the code test. If the test passed, then you build and you deploy.
Yeah, as part of your development life cycle, right?
Yeah, actually, it's even more than that. It's probably build, then test, because you wanted to get the build with all the right parameters for that environment, test based on the environment, and then go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, any other questions on in here?
Yep, that's the last. William says, got it. Thanks for the explanation.
Cool. That's awesome. So, this first one we show was how to create that from a run, right? I have another example here, and now we're starting to get into more complex examples. Let me guess this create from workflow and show you. On this one, you can see that I don't have any mocks. That means that I started creating mocks, right? And for that, I'm creating my trigger mock, which is just an HTTP, so it was easy. Then I started creating a new list row actions that is a Dataverse call. And for that, I created a dynamic output, and I'll show you why in a minute. Then I have my send message, which can be static because I just sending and receiving, it's okay. Here is how I actually created a mock definition. I included the trigger mock and a list of actions, right? Just to remind that one, this is workflow 2, which is like this. No, sorry, this is workflow 1. Too many workflows. I have an HTTP request. I get a list of workflows. I iterate on each one of the workflows. And for each one of them, I compose using account and name. Then I send that message to Service Bus. So I'll be able to do that with a test if that logic works without touching a Service Bus or Dataverse. Okay. Then what I wanted to assert here is first, if the logic app works, assert that my for each compose work fine, it is executed. and that my for each compose status was successful. That means that all the loops worked. But more than that, I can go and look at for each repetition if the logic that I created, if my account ID was created with the right value and my account name was created with the right value based on the logic that I defined. And that logic was based here, right? When I call that call list mock callback, I created 3 entries for that, each one of them with with an account called, if it's 1,000, so it's going to be 1,000, 1,001, and 1,002, and name 1,000, name 1,001, name 1,002. Then after that, I just add that action output to the action and send it back. And all of that is going to be done during execution. So let's try to debug that one. Create from definition multiple rows. Let's debug this. There we go. So you see that I set up that list rows, but it didn't being called yet, right? Because by now we know that it's only going to be called after I run this. So let me put a breakpoint here. We have one. And let's continue running. Okay, so now I'm inside that during that execution of that list callback, right? And it's going to be generating a list of 3 items. If I look at this, the action mock output, I have a body that has a value with a list of 3 items, and each one of those, see, like the whole Dataverse format. But in here, I have account number as 1,000, and the account name, which is going to be, sorry, not account name, name, which is the name of the item, as the name. Okay. If I go back to my assertions, just to show how that's going to work. So the basic stuff is fine. The for each compose run, and then for each one of the executions, is that particular repetition, which is the current execution of that compose, correct? Yes. Does the name, the account ID matches the value? Yes. And the account name match the value? Yes. And we can do that for each one of the 3 items, and then that thing passed. The last one that I want to show, and I'm not even going to execute because by now you got the gist, and you're probably interested, like in all the having other questions now, is getting this one here. And on that, I'm doing it a little bit different because this last workflow looks like this. I have a request. I still have that list of accounts, but now for each of those accounts, I get in a contact related to that. I get in a balance. I get in those two values, and I'm creating a message associated to that, right? And that message is getting data from my get balance pass JSON. I getting data from my account, like the actual row, getting first and last name from contact name, email from contact email, and balance from the pass JSON. So having a lot of information, and this is the kind of stuff that it would be really hard to actually be able to test. You would probably have to go manually and looking into the results. So on this example here, I have first I have to mock my trigger, my list row, my get contact, my HTTP action, and my send. Right, so I mock all of those, but my get list, my get contact, and my get balance, I'm making it dynamic, so I can actually write some code for that. And that one we saw that it ran once, right? But this one is going to be running on each execution of on each execution of the loop. And more than that, if you look at on that one, I actually getting the account ID from the current input item, and then calling my contact Joe account ID, Smith account ID, and email that, right? And send that back. And for the balance, I actually getting the account ID and putting a balance as 1,000 for that. Right, so I'm going to be I'll put a breakpoint just on this one because it's exactly the same idea, but I'll put a breakpoint here. And let's try to run the dynamic callbacks in debug mode. And I promise that that's the last one. Okay, so I'm here in that context, right? And right now, sorry, that's supposed to be F10. I have account ID of 1,000. Then I have the account ID of 1,002. And I probably missed the first one of the account ID of 1,000 because I did at F5 instead of F10. Well, no, I didn't. So 1,001. So you see that it ran 3 times, and each one of them it gets like the actual loop. Then after that, it should be completed. And if everything went correctly, my dynamic callback also passed. And just to show the types of things that I could do here, I actually did like very extensive test on this. I tested like if the values are not null. I tested like the values that I created on my compose actually matched the values for each one of the iterations, right? So that's the kind of complexity that complex testing that you'll be able to do using the unit test framework with access to all of that. That will not be able to be doing, or would be a lot harder to be doing if you have to do this using the using like the methods that we had so far. So probably next question for you guys is, when can you get hold of this? This is available now as of this morning, right? So that you have access to that on extension 558.8, right? Documentation is publishing on PST time around 4 p.m. And I'm going to have a quick announcement blog post today, but some of those in-depth examples as blog posts throughout next week. What we have in scope and we have in out of scope on that preview is like, as I showing, the create from run, the create from workflow definition, the SDK, and the inclusion of like all those dynamic callbacks. All of that is available today on the preview. There are some actions that we're still working on, and I think the main ones to talk is child workflows is still not supported on that preview. Inline and function and local function actions like custom code, inline C#, inline PowerShell, and inline JavaScript is still not available, right? And from those ones, we are still discussing, I think inline, what we'll try to do is actually make it execute, because that's still part of your code logic. You'll not be able to put a breakpoint inside of the inline, but you'll be able to execute that. Right, and then after that, test the sessions around that result. The local function, we're probably going to be making it as a mock, because you should be able to test your logic in isolation. And we also have the transform actions that we're planning to bring as mocks. So you can test your maps in isolation, but you should be able to mock the results of those tests or execute, depending on if you have the mock or not. Any other questions?
There are no more questions in the chat.
Okay, and I think that's pretty much what we have for today. I hope that people is as excited as on that one as I am, because it like playing with that yesterday for that demo, I could see like how in depth we can go with some of those tests, and I was able to do all of that and make sure that my logic is all solid without having to hit any external connectors, right? And because of that, not being able to have to set up all of that data outside, which usually is really hard to do, like trying to do that with a SAP system, even Dataverse or like a Salesforce would be really hard, because usually we as developer have access to the connector, but not necessarily to the systems. So if there is no other questions, I think it's time we can say goodbye. Hope everyone enjoyed the show today, and until May.
Yeah. See you next month.
See you all.
Bye-bye.